I'm Marianne Clyde.
And I'm Lorna McGill. And today we have an awesome privilege of having Jan Molino with us here. She's the president and CEO of Aspire Ascend, an award-winning board coach, a public speaker, and gender equity expert. And I love the tagline that I saw on your LinkedIn, and it was, "I help women build power as a leader." So I think that is so awesome. So I think you'll bring a unique perspective. You bring a unique perspective of the perspective that women bring to the boardroom, which it's like really important, and it's a valuable offering that you have. And Jan has also been on Forbes, Thrive Global, and Medium. So much to talk about with you.
That's what I'm afraid of.
You said you were open, so we're ready to go.
Oh.
All right. Well, can you just describe for our audience exactly what it is you do? What does that mean when you give women their power?
So I help organizations understand the value and perspective women bring to the table as leaders and as board directors. And then I provide one-on-one executive coaching and board development to women executives. And as you mentioned before, most of my speeches are on the power of women in the boardroom and women in leadership. So I work directly with the C-suite in the boardroom and then help women get prepared to get noticed to be on paid board seats.
Now, what do you see as like one of those, like, how do you train them to do that? Like, what are some important characteristics?
Well, I don't really train them. I look at where they're coming from, what's the value they would add to the boardroom, and more importantly, how prepared are they to sit on a board? Unfortunately or fortunately, I've heard this many, many times, that's my retirement plan. I'm going to sit on paid board seats. And it just doesn't happen that way. And it doesn't certainly happen on big public boards because you have to have a big name that goes with that. So just getting their expectations back in order is the first step. And the second step is to really look at, are they a thought leader? What's the value do they bring to the board? And what area of expertise will be standing out amongst all the other candidates that they're going to look at? And most of them are men.
You had mentioned the last time we spoke about that women, as powerful as they might be, and as successful as they might be in their current role or in their past life or whatever, but that there are beliefs that we tend to carry with us that limit our effectiveness on male-dominated venues and so forth. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't know if it's how we were raised, and I'm talking about new generations too, where girls are thought to be, a quieter group. And it's interesting to note that when we get to the boardroom, the first thing that we do is sit in the side seats instead of right up at the table. That's the first thing we do wrong.
Putting everyone else ahead of us.
Exactly. So you need to take that seat at the table. The other part is really their executive presence and their confidence. And that makes up for so much. Many years ago, when I was in retained search, I had a search for a major company. They wanted to start a social media, they wanted to start an advisory board, which is less intense than a regular board because it has no fiduciary responsibility. And generally, it's because of the expertise you bring to the table. So nobody knew anything about social media. We ended up putting in a 24-year-old young woman who knew a lot about social media. She knew nothing about boards, but the way she came across and the way she carried herself at 24 was amazing.
Wow.
And yes, she is on the big board today.
Wow. Her skill and her talent just kind of showed up for her.
Yes, she was amazing. And she's even better today because she's one of 9 women on that board.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
right?
pretty awesome.
Awesome.
Isn't that wonderful?
So what do you feel like women do to undersell themselves or underplay their skills and talents?
Well, again, it goes back to how you come across, how you project, how you walk into a room. I was very lucky in my life to have a woman sponsor, and I didn't even know what that word meant back then, because all you ever heard about were mentors.
Right.
This woman, I was her vice president of the marketing for the big healthcare system we worked for at the time. And when I first met her, I thought, this is the most amazing woman I've ever met in my life, and she's going to teach me so much. And those were the best words I ever said to myself. She taught me, when you enter a room, even go right up to people and start to introduce yourself. Don't stand in the corner, and don't stand by the potted plant.
Like here I am with my potted plant.
There's Marianne.
She taught me the soft skills that
Mhm.
we're great at.
we're very great at. To smother all those because we want to act like the guys, and that's just the wrong way to try and do this at all. When women have the most amazing skills, and that's what wins in the boardroom, and that's what wins when you're looking at where's your next step and what's your next transition, looking at where you can add real value, but as a woman leader.
Wow.
It's interesting because we do tend to undersell ourselves. I see it all the time when I speak with very powerful, confident women that have big jobs. When you really start, wanting them to showcase themselves, they shrink back many more times than I would have ever imagined. Because you're like, knowing them just in a business setting, it's like, man, she's awesome. But you don't want to highlight yourself many times.
Yeah, and it's very unfortunate. We women are kind of put our heads down at work and hope that somebody will see how much we're doing. And the men are on the golf course making deals. So we need to change how we do things. We need to come across, we need to get out, we need to network. I can't begin to tell you how much networking is so important.
So we need to play golf.
Well, I don't play golf.
I don't either.
But you do what?
Ride the cart.
You're on the golf course.
I am on the golf course. I drive the cart, and every now and then I do putt, but nobody really wants me on the golf course.
So your gifts and talents are other places.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I tried golf lessons once, and this is not easy. I do not want to spend my time doing this.
Yeah, I don't think I have the swing. I don't have the stand.
I don't either. I'm sorry, Marianne.
So Jan, what do you think are the qualities that a woman brings to the boardroom that enhance the way the board operates and the effectiveness of it? And what are the key things that women do contribute that weren't there when it was all men?
Well, first of all, women think outside the box, and they bring different perspectives to the table. It's not the same old thing. And even when you're looking at trying to buy a company or mergers and acquisitions, they look at it from the employee standpoint as well as the C-suite. And they also bring compassion to the table and really looking at what's the value that's going to happen in this boardroom. So it's important to remember that women make a difference because we know how to think outside the box. We don't follow the lines. And it's no different than really raising a family, to tell you the truth. We know how to delegate. We know how to get influencers, and we know how to influence everybody in the room. And that's what women do the best.
I know women are so effective around the world when they, whether they're entrepreneurs or they're workers, paid employees and stuff like that, they really do, because they think outside the box. And I think because we multifunction so well, it's kind of how we're created, that we can think, men have their strengths with being focused and so forth, and they can carry things through. But a woman can see things, like you said, from many different angles. And if she's verbal and will share that kind of stuff, I think that could be so, so helpful.
Well, yeah, when you look at the unique and innate talents women bring to the table, the one is the power of leadership, belonging, connections, and that is a real value in the boardroom. The other one is the kind of relationships they develop, and they take accountability for a lot of people. So they're not afraid to make decisions.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if the boardroom is in anyone's future as their next transition in life, they need to know how to go about it too. It doesn't happen easily for women. That's still something that has not changed since boards began, to tell you the truth. And we've gone backwards since the pandemic, losing seats for women as well. But
And what do you think that's about?
because women are the primary caregivers. And so they're back at the home and they're taking care of things. And so they've taken their name off the list.
Oh,
Yes. So we were at 30% of board seats for women in public and private boards. And we are now down to 26%. So this is the sad part of what the pandemic did to us too. And they also took themselves out of the workplace of being the CEO as well. So we are slowly getting back to where we were before. So we've lost ground.
and is that in the US or is that globally?
Yeah, well, globally, they are much better than us. Generally in Europe, they run at 45 to 50% women on boards because it's a mandate. It's a mandate. Yeah. It's not a mandate.
I don't want to give up the seats here.
It is still a man's world, and you still need a man to get on the board. So I always tell the women that I work with that no, men are not the enemy. Men need to be our advocates and our supporters. So it's all a big circle. You all have to work together.
Right. As soon as you stop being at odds with each other, I mean, that's part of the solution for the entire planet as far as raising the energy on the planet. If people didn't hate each other, it would be different.
Yeah.
Much different. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you an unrelated question. So continue your line of thought.
No, I was just going to say, the other thing that we women don't do is we don't raise our hand. We don't raise our hand and share our aspirations with our boss or our colleagues. We sit there and wait for it to come to us. And again, men don't do that.
You mean we're waiting for somebody to ask us what we want or what we envision or that kind of thing?
Absolutely, from promotions to being on a board seat. It's an interesting phenomenon that has not really gone away yet. We don't share it and we don't talk to our boss and say, I really think I would be good on a board seat. And so the clients that I work with, I tell them they can't do anything until they talk to their boss and tell them what they want. Because 9 times out of 10, they'll help them, which has been proven in the case, the ones that I have been working with. So it's nice. It's really nice to have somebody help open the door for you or introduce you to the right influential network.
And a very pleasant surprise.
Yes and no. You should have a relationship with your boss. You should be building that kind of trust too. So it's going to go hand in hand, really.
And networking is based on relationships. So if you don't have a good connection with your boss, I just think so many things could fall apart so easily. And how, a little bit, we were talking about golf earlier as far as a networking tool and building relationships and everything. What do you notice specifically about women when they network? Do they network in different ways?
They network in groups.
Really?
Women tend to go to networking events with another woman or a group of women. We don't go ourselves at all, but it's okay to bring friends with you as long as you separate and start introducing yourselves to people. The other part is to introduce yourself and then let people talk. Sometimes we're so nervous, we just keep talking to cover up because we don't like the sounds of silence. So we keep talking. We need to let people talk, and then you're going to find out what they know and how you can interject and really bring into perspective how you could help them or their organization, or just learn more. The other part is as I said earlier, we tend to, hug the wall and not mingle with people we don't know. And that's unfortunate because women are really good at this.
Mhm.
Very good connections and meeting people. It's just innate to most of us.
Well, I have noticed too that when women go to networking groups, in groups like that, they'll sit at the same table and so forth. And so if there's 8 people at a table, all of a sudden there's a couple people less that you would meet if you would all divide and conquer,
Right.
and share your story and ask your questions and find out about all the other people. I think so much more effective if we split up when we walk in the door, like you had said to do as well.
Well, as I said, Joyce, who was my mentor, sponsor, when we would go to meetings, she would go, okay, we're split the room. You go that way, I go this way. And when she first told me that, I was like, oh, I don't. And I was new. I had moved to Chicago for the position, and I knew no one in that room. She goes, even better. I'm like, oh God, just. And I didn't think I would get through it. And honestly, after that was over, it was the most amazing meeting ever. I met so many people, and honestly, to this day, they're still in my network because connections, yeah. And whether it was children, whether it was, a hobby, or whether it was just, shopping or a dress, whatever it was, we had a connection, and then we started to talk, and we actually made friends, and then we did business. It's all about building relationships, and it's all about building the right kind of relationships and building an influential network, which is what she really taught me, what Joyce taught me. And I continue to do that to this day. And that's what I teach and coach my clients. Going back to search one more time. Only 20% of the searches go to search firms for the board seats. All the rest are through your network. So now you have to see how important that network is.
That's a huge thing. So important.
I know.
You don't often go to what's that?
I said, they're all waiting for that phone call from a search firm. It's not going to happen.
Do you think women don't have the skills, or they don't use the skills to generate the things they want rather than ask for, you had said when they walk in the boardroom, they sit on the side seats, they go to a networking thing, they kind of hang around the sides until somebody talks to them and so forth. My experience has been that women really can shake things up and make things happen if they just know how powerful they really are. So how do you communicate that to the women that you help are in their search for board seats, to use their power, to recognize their power?
So let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
One of the clients that I'm working with and still working with, the first time she came to me, she had her sights set on a couple boards that were never going to happen. They're big, huge public boards. And I said, those are great aspirations. I said, but I think we just need to look at what will be your first board. And then we'll worry about the rest of them. Okay. She brought to the table so much. She was a she was a general counsel. She had a huge background in regulatory. And so most of the boards that you look at coming from a regulatory background or understanding the regulatory space is a good place to be. But as a general counsel, She had no profit or loss in her little bag of tricks. She had I think she had like one person reporting to her. So what they were looking for in a board seat was somebody who could actually get on the audit committee. Well, if you have no profit and loss in your background or no experience, you're not going to get on the audit committee. So must have been 6 months when we were working together, and she brought the offer to me of a board that it was a technology board out on the West Coast. And I said, okay, that's a pretty nice offer. And I said, but do you trust me? She goes, yeah. I said, do you trust me all the way? I said, we're going to turn this down. She goes, what? No. What I mean, you want it too much.
Sounds like terrible advice, right? Scary.
No, I don't trust you anymore.
No, well, it was funny. And I said, just listen to me a minute. I said, ask to be on the audit committee. And she said, okay, I'll go back and I'll do that. She goes, but I can accept it, right? And I said, you can do whatever you want. I said, I'm just giving you guidance. If you don't want to follow it, that's fine. So she went back and she told him that she wanted the audit committee. And they go, oh, no, you can't have the audit committee. Can't have it. And she was brave enough. I just love this. She said, okay, fine. Well, she goes, I really can't accept this offer. And I don't think they expected that.
Right.
So they said, just hold on. And the reason that she couldn't have the audit committee was because the gentleman who was the head of the audit committee was intimidated by her. He was an attorney, and she had more regulatory background than he did. So she was actually a threat in his eyes. So it had nothing to do with her background. So yes, they did give her the audit committee. Then they made her the chair of the regulatory committee, and she's doing quite well. But the lesson here is because she didn't come with any profit and loss, and she is on the audit committee, other boards will look at her now.
Oh, wow.
So you just have
Your advice turned out to be pretty right on.
It's the building block.
it's a building block. And because she has audit experience now, she's being considered for one big, very public board, which would be phenomenal. Won't have been considered otherwise. So it's the steps you have to take, and sometimes you have to walk away.
Which is probably one of the
hardest thing to do.
Well, the other thing with a public board or a paid board seat is there are no term limits. So you choose very carefully if you like this board and the culture.
Yeah.
It's a long time with them.
I think that is really very key, is really looking at that culture, because even the culture will determine how effective you can be once you're in that seat.
Yeah, that's really important that you said that. They were considering somebody for the company. I can't remember, I think it was the CEO, and it was a woman they were looking at. And the board said, well, she has all this responsibility and she's on 2 other boards. Can she handle all this? And my client didn't say anything. She let it go because she's a smart lady. And then at the end, when they all circled back, she goes, I was just looking at the other candidates, the guys that we're looking at, and they're have a lot of responsibility. Do you think they can actually handle this as well?
What
I mean?
Yeah.
It's just do it and how you say it. And she didn't make a fuss. She didn't carry on about women, blah, blah. And yes, they did hire the woman. So it's just.
So she handled it.
Influence. See what I mean? That influence that women have, and that innate ability to actually read the room and understand what's going on instead of just charging in.
And that's that's important in anything that you do, but you're right. You always have to read that room and say, what impact can I have? And it's many times, just like you said, was that question or that statement is really strategically even waiting. Like she paused and said, I'm not jumping right in and responding to this. I'm going to think about it, which often has more impact than if you respond immediately.
Yeah, and you know, what she brings to the table is what I try, even when I was in executive search. You have the credentials,
Mhm.
soft skills that you bring to the table that separate you from the other candidates. And as long as you have these things, you will do very well. And so those are the things that we women, you know, don't look at as powerful, but they're very powerful. You know, executive presence, confidence, being persuasive, you know, empowering and influence. And also one of them that is strong self-esteem and resilience. These are the things that women bring to the table that are soft skills that change the dynamics in the room, period.
But it's interesting. I remember a conversation we had before, previous conversation, where you mentioned that, you know, when women apply for jobs, they like look at all the credentials or everything that's required, and they're like, if they don't meet every one of them, they're like, I'm not qualified. Whereas a man, I can't remember the percentage, but you know, like what was like 30%, like they're like, oh yeah, I can do that.
No, pretty much 100% tell you. Yeah, it's big, but that is the difference, you know, and that's what we women need to learn as well. And again, I told you that people come to me and they want this to be their retirement plan, their next transition. And I'm going, you know, this is a really hard job, right? It's a minimum of 200 hours. And and you're not even on a committee yet. So board work is not just your retirement plan, it's work. It's
Right.
you know,
And it's
A lot of
liability.
responsibility.
mhm. But there's a lot of joy to it too, because you are really making a difference.
Mhm.
And I've watched the people that I've coached, and they're just making such great strides in the boardroom and the changes that they've made.
Mhm.
Subtle, but they're happening.
Well, I'm thinking back to that woman that you said, you know, they said something about, do you think you can handle this? And I think most people, um, men included, would respond to that if they felt offended right off the bat, and they would not respond, they would react to that with, you know, there's a tendency for people to have a knee-jerk reaction. And the fact that she did not do the knee-jerk thing, and she just sat and sort of reigned, you know, with her, you know, just let it pass. But she still made her point. Such an important skill to do. Do you think that most of the women, I'm sure that's one of the things you train them to do as you're coaching them to, is just don't get caught up in the drama, you know?
Yeah, the boardroom is kind of like a little Peyton place, you know. Yeah, there is a lot of drama,
Mhm.
and you have to be prepared for that. And you have to be the one that's not making the drama. You need to be the calm. And every time I look at somebody that I work with, and when they get on the board and they get the huge board books that they have to read, because board meetings are usually 2 or 3 days. And I said, you need to read every single page of it. And then I want you to write a note on each section. And I want you to ask a question in each section, because you need to talk. You have to speak in that boardroom. And I want you to ask a question, and I want you to know the answer. And I said, you may not ask everyone in the room a question at that time. I said, but you need to ask questions. You need to have a voice in at that room. You have to earn that seat at the table, and then you take it.
Women, I think most people, men included, if they're new at a board, would tend to sit back and think, well, let me just kind of get a overview of what's going on here, and mostly be silent. I mean, I know some boards that Lorna and I had been on, you know, where it's almost annoying that nobody talks, you know, because everybody's kind of afraid to shake things up, or afraid to look stupid, or afraid. So your advice, especially the advice part where you said make sure you know the answer, is so important, because it gives you a good second point. It gives you a good redirect if you need it. It gives you a good follow-up question to ask. And it just sounds like you empower them beautifully. with knowing the questions, knowing the answers.
Be
Don't sit on the
prepared.
side.
Just like you said, be prepared. Because so many people, I mean, you go into a boardroom, you're like, no one is freaking prepared at this.
Right. And the nonprofit boards are run a whole lot different than the paid board seats. And again, you're looking at profit and loss, you're looking at shareholders' value. So you have to bring a different perspective to the table. And if you're the only woman in that boardroom, on that board right now, you do need to make a space for other women. So you have to know your answers. You have to be empowered, because guess what? There is going to be somebody that leaves this board, and we want to get another woman in that board, because
Absolutely.
one woman is a token, 2 is competition, and 3 is a quorum.
There you go.
Well, there you go.
There you go. You got it figured out, don't you?
I love this thing, don't you?
How long have you been doing that? I mean, working with getting women prepared to be on boards.
This is my 10th year. And I really love it, because it's my own company. And we get to work with people that we really like and really want to do the hard work, because this doesn't happen overnight. I mean, it can take up to 2 years to get on a board seat.
Mhm.
And
But isn't that true, that the truth for anything that's worth it? Like, it takes time. Like, it never happens over, like, you hear about like these overnight successes, or gosh, that just happened like so quickly for that person. But in reality, that's typically not the case. They've been doing the work in the back end to prepare themselves, because you have to do that to be effective. You can't just jump in. If you leap in, you're not going to necessarily be as effective. Or I've found in my experience that's not the case.
no, you're absolutely correct. If we want to make a difference, and again, remember, we still had that ground to make up again from the pandemic, getting the women back into the CEO seats and on the boards that make a difference. And the women that I work with are actually looking at their second and third board seats right now. That first one is really hard, but don't think the second one isn't going to be easy or hard. It's going to be hard. And then there's the diversification too. Like, if you're on a board that is a family board, so to speak, okay, that runs way differently than any other board, because again, you're not family.
Right.
So you're, an outsider in many respects, and you bring in new thinking, but that doesn't mean it's always accepted.
Right.
And that's a whole different dynamic. So if your second board is a family board, you're going to get stuck in that arena. So you need to diversify too.
Wow, what powerful insights that you're giving these women. I think it's fabulous, and we love that you do that. But I don't want to let you go unless you can have something that you wanted to tell the women that we haven't asked you. You have something they need to know. Top 3 things, whatever it is that you want to make sure you get in there before we close up. What would that be?
Well, I want women to understand what I was explaining to you before. One, I want them to raise their hand. I want them to share their aspirations with their bosses, with their colleagues. I want them to participate. Maybe they have some stock in that, but participate in investors' calls, learn the dynamics, and go to a seminar and learn more about the boardroom. Get boardroom ready. And boards, every board in the world runs on Robert's Rules of Order. So
Yeah.
The book.
the book is very long. Buy the cliff notes of that and learn how the boardroom works. The other thing is to get some intensive training. I coach women to understand the entry barriers and what the competition is and how to position themselves. So I want them to understand what the boardroom's like. So I ask them to get some intensive training. And then the next one is to toughen up their soft skills. Technical skills are all good. You need to toughen up on your soft skills. And the last one is to delegate well. And there is a saying, and I know y'all know this, behind every great man, there's always, always a great woman. But behind every great woman is success and well-being, and that is because we delegate so well.
Well, that's very insightful. Thank you for sharing that. Jan,
That's
this has been fabulous. Lorna,
I
do you have any final questions or anything?
No, I think it's been wonderful. You've made so many good points that, I think just would really help empower women.
Absolutely.
If you're looking for women who want to take the next step in their life and the next transition, and if this is where they want to go, it isn't an easy jump. It's work, and they need to identify their true selves, which you obviously talk to them about all the time, and then to take ownership of their future, of where they want to go, and to live their best life.
Talking our language.
Yeah.
I mean,
Jan,
it is.
thank
It
you
is so.
so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And thank you, audience, for joining us. And we will see you on the next podcast.